cleared to Rochester.
Good evening.
Turkish 2, stand number 8, information postcode destination limit, Tango Bravo operator, go ahead.
Radar vector is Neon, Jet 22.
5, radar vector Confetti, and direct Nantucket, and then direct Alex, then as filed, maintain 5,000, expect 350, 10 minutes after, walking 1640 via Foxtrot, American Land.
Right, clear to the Baltimore-Washington Airport. Departure, flight heading of 185, radar vectors to Robbinsville, then as filed. Yo!
Jeez.
My name is Adam Hawkins, Sergeant, United States Army, 1st Cavalry Division, 2nd Brigade Combat Team, 1-5 Scout Platoon.
These guys got hit, they got nailed.
Joshua Hargis, I served in the Army. I retired in 2005 as a sergeant.
My name is Michael Jernigan. I'm a corporal that was medically retired in the United States Marine Corps in 2005.
He's got a foothold, sir. Got him.
Fox 7, this is Fox.
Maria Miles. I am a mission coordinator for the Veterans Airlift Command.
My name is Justin Jordan, retired Master Sergeant, United States Air Force.
My name is Taylor Hargis.
My name is Kimberly Jernigan, wife and caregiver to Michael Jernigan.
I'm Michael Adam Schlitz, and I was born in Moline, Illinois.
My full name is Dominic Martinez. In the military, I was military police, 31 Bravo.
Where's Walt?
Right there.
Well, the way we treat our veterans is going to determine how many volunteers you have the next time you have to fight. Washington said that back in 1789. Oliver North, United States Marine Corps, Lieutenant Colonel, retired. When you look at the kind of care that we give them, at least immediately on the battlefield, it's designed to make them as healthy as possible and, when possible, go back to the fight. For the very severely wounded, and we've seen a lot of that in this war because of the nature of the injuries, they'll never go back to fight, but you want to get them as healthy as possible because A, it's good for them, it's good for their families, and if they could be productive, all to the good of the country. I believe they don't want a handout, they want a hand up. They don't want a gift, they want to be productive and earn it. They don't want someone to just give them things. They want to be part of building something as a legacy for their family and themselves, and they are enormous benefits to the community with it. The challenge in our country has been the Veterans Administration, and quite frankly, they've not been up to the task. The care in many of the hospitals has not been all it needs to be, and we have 20+ million veterans of American wars, going all the way back to World War II and since. Well, mercifully, the veterans of this war have not been treated as were the veterans of my first war, called Vietnam.
So age 12, I started taking flying lessons. I would work 18 hours, fly an hour. Work 18 hours, fly an hour. So over a period of 4 years, I got enough experience to solo on my 16th birthday. I think I had a total of 8 hours of flying time over 3 years, a couple in the year that I actually soloed. At age 18, out of high school, I joined the Army as young as you could join the Army to the day. Before you could fly in the Army, you had to be 18 years and 6 months old before you took the controls of a helicopter. The recruiter backed up from the day that I could take controls and said you can't enlist until 1967, January 13. On January 13, 1967, I joined the Army.
When I was a young teenager, I knew that I wanted to serve in the military. It was, just a fire that was burning inside of me. So I tried to enlist when I was a senior in high school, about 17. My mom wouldn't sign any of the paperwork for me to go in early. So I had to wait until I graduated, turned 18. The military was the most difficult thing that I had ever done. Through basic training, then I later went on to airborne school, decided to go to the Ranger Assessment and Selection Program, and I got picked up to be a member of the 75th Ranger Regiment. And that was in late 2010, and my first deployment was early 2011.
I went in the military pretty much right out after high school. Honestly, I was a little immature. I knew if I went to college, I was probably going to struggle. I'd probably party a little too hard and not really pay enough attention to the classes. And I didn't really have the direction and really an idea of what I wanted to do. And my father had been a Navy veteran. My brother was already in the Army. My goal was to come in the military, do a few years, maybe come back out, go to college, and then figure out what I want to do. Okay. Came in the Army in March of 1996, and pretty much right off the get-go of it, I just fell in love with it.
I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky for basic training for 16 weeks. There's nothing like it. Nothing like the camaraderie, the esprit de corps that you build with everybody through basic training, and we had a great time. And I went straight from there to Fort Hood, Texas, where I was in the scout platoon for one platoon for all 10 years.
I joined the military in 2003, just after graduating high school. As a military police, I did the first 2.5 years was in Missouri. And then we got our orders to deploy in 2006. We got actually into theater in February, and when we were there, we were only there for 14 days before my attack took us out of theater.
I was an athlete pretty much through high school, track, basketball, you name it, and I didn't really. Academia wasn't my thing so much. My parents were both, my dad was an administrator principal and my mother was a math teacher. And I was kind of a social butterfly. I liked to be at all the parties or arrange them and this, that, and the other. So I didn't one clique, I liked everybody. And seemingly everybody liked me. So it was a great time, but grades weren't my thing. I was a solid C student on my best day. So going to college just didn't really present that much interest to me. I looked around, the Army just didn't seem like a right fit. The Coast Guard wasn't, but the Air Force kind of fit what I liked, and went over to see the recruiter, and 8 weeks later I was in basic training.
I was 23 years old, bartending on St. Pete Beach in St. Pete, Florida. Had dropped out of junior college. My dad was a Marine and then a soldier, and my grandfather was a Marine. My other grandfather was Career Air Force. So I decided to enlist in the Marine Corps. I went through boot camp in South Carolina, went through School of Infantry and infantry training at Camp Geiger in North Carolina, and I soon dropped to the fleet in 2003.
My name is Richard Burkett Jr. I'm a retired Marine Major. I served from 94 to 2016.
I started out in '94. I went enlisted in the Army and was a wire system installer, basically a lineman. Went into the reserves, ended up carrying a radio, getting a couple other MOSs, but that was all to finish college with my degree so I could go the officer route. Once that was accomplished, I went and applied for officer candidate school for the United States Marine Corps, was accepted, and I moved on from there.
It was my day off. It was October 26th, 1968. My platoon leader came to me and said, "We're flying with the 9th Infantry Division tomorrow. Those are always tough missions because I always get into it. And I don't like navigating. I need help. Will you fly with me tomorrow?" Because I was an aircraft commander in gunship, so I didn't fly co-pilot typically. I said, sure. So I went on my day off with my platoon leader, flew a lead in a gunship team. We made a combat assault near the Cambodian border, and I was flying the helicopter when we took off. He knew I liked to fly, so I flew the helicopter. So when we took off after rearming and reloading, preparing to go in and do this combat assault, I flew. We took off, we cleared the fence at the end of the runway and the minefield, and that's when the co-pilot would reach up and arm the guns by pushing the circuit breakers in. Since I was flying, that would have been his job, but he was used to flying, and so nobody did it. So we took off, we flew out to the landing zone to prep the landing zone for the combat assault. Helicopters inbound, firing rockets and miniguns on both sides of the landing zone and around it so that the enemy's heads will be kept down while the combat assault's inbound. So we roll in, and he went to fire the rockets, and click, click, nothing. And I looked up, and all the circuit breakers were hanging open. And I said, oh no, and I reached up to arm all the guns. He, in the meantime, did a very short turn, 360-degree turn. We almost stopped in midair. And when he rolled back in, and guns blazing everywhere, and fired the rockets, I think it was probably the second rocket coming out of the tube exploded as it came out of the tube. And shrapnel from that rocket came through the cockpit. A big explosion, and everything turned to slow motion. My foot flipped. I grabbed my knee and my foot flipped up and turned around backwards and landed in my lap. So my boot is lying in my lap, and immediately you go into shock. So there's no pain. It's sort of it hurts everywhere, but it doesn't hurt anywhere. This is bad. My crew chief, door gunner actually, behind me had taken shrapnel in his chest. And in a count of like 1, 2, 3, he came forward, pulled the pin on my seat, laid my seat 90 degrees backward, and pulled his belt off and put a tourniquet on my leg. I mean, like 1, 2, 3, and I had a tourniquet on my leg. And meantime, the aircraft commander had kind of freaked out over this. I could tell he was in a panic. When things happen like that, your immediate reaction is fight or flight, and he was there. And he was in flight. He was pulling pitch, and he pulled too much pitch, and the rotor blades were starting to slow down. I could see the low rotor RPM light horn beeping, and watching the tachometer. I was laying on my back. I reached up with my right toe and keyed the microphone on the stick, on my stick, and told him, "Lee, it's okay, I'm okay. Just relax, don't kill us." And it calmed him down. He just, sort of a voice of reality slipped into his helmet, and his helmet fire went out, and he flew the helicopter.
My father knew more about what it was about. He was a Marine in Vietnam. He watched the planes coming home, unloading bodies and loading fresh recruits up. I think it was a little bit rougher for him. May 9th of 2007, we were on a standard President's Patrol in a Baghdad neighborhood, and there was an IED suspended in a tree, and there was a pressure plate that was on the road. My driver saw it at the very last second and turned the wheel. I was wounded, peppered with shrapnel. This is a piece from that explosion. It's like my lucky charm. It's my American Express card. I don't leave home without it. My driver was wounded, my TC was wounded. The truck was completely destroyed. It wasn't able to be used ever again. I was sitting in the gunner's hatch. The blast shield had blown back on top of me, and I couldn't move, and I thought I was dead. And I started choking on smoke, and I saw blood running off of my face, so I knew I was alive. And I just start telling my crew, I'm hurt, I don't know how bad, and then I passed out.
in this war, most of the casualties have been created not by artillery fire or small arms fire. It's been by IEDs, these improvised explosive devices. And so you can be in a convoy 1 minute, you could be 10 vehicles back or the lead vehicle, you could be the last vehicle. I have seen in this war more of those kinds of casualties than I think my dad did in World War II, where in an attack you know that something's bad going to happen to somebody, but simply driving down a road delivering supplies from one unit to another in this war has become a very, very dangerous venture. It's given rise to the idea that there's no such thing as a front line in combat anymore. And to a large extent, that's true. The preparation that's done for them is to convince them that they've got the best armor, they've got the best equipment, they've got the best means of detection. And I believe that as long as I'm with a dog. When I get off a helicopter behind a dog, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to step on an IED. I love bomb dogs.
So going through the canine handler course, one of the dogs, he got freed up from one of his other handlers. He was unruly, he was young, he had some conditioning issues, but after we worked together, I was able to see his potential and how amazing of a dog he really was. We had a lot of fun together. We hung out in the kennels constantly. The night of October 5th, 2013, we went out on target, and it was unlike any other mission that we had been on. We started running down this ravine, and about 100, 200 meters in, we started hearing explosions go off at the target building that we were supposed to go and clear. Immediately upon sending the dog out, I lost visual sight of the dog and an explosion went off. I tried recalling the dog and I heard nothing. So me and one of the other team leaders, we went up on the hillside to try and get a clear line of sight of what had gone on. And when we got about halfway up this hill, I saw the remains of my dog. It was about from his midsection down, and everything else was just gone. So I had an American flag on me. It was the only thing I could think of to kind of wrap up my dog in. I picked up what was left of him and we started back to the target building. When we got back, it was just complete chaos. I looked down and one of my friends, he had lost some of his limbs and he was already gone. I stopped, put my dog down. I saw some of the sensitive items that were laying on the ground a few feet from me. I figured I'd go and collect that stuff while the other guys are working on all the injured. A few steps later, I ended up stepping on a pressure plate IED. Flew through the air, hit the ground, didn't really know what was going on. Within a few seconds, our medic was on me and he was throwing tourniquets on and stopping the bleeding and providing first aid for me.
So we're doing night patrols at the time. We were getting ready to head back, and just as I had gotten up, I heard a loud boom. I heard a buddy of mine, another guy in the squad, say, "Hey, we need another guy over here to help out with Brad. He's been hit." So we go out there and we start, laying out the litter and taking care of Brad. Just as we had the litter all flat, I stepped on the litter to kind of pull Brad onto it, and as soon as I stepped onto it, that's when I hit the second one. And I realized, I just stepped on a bomb. I need to get out of this hole, make sure that I'm all right. So kind of like dug myself out. And I remember sitting up, kind of looking up at the sky. It was like, I took a breath and I realized, I was still alive and I could breathe fine. So that was good. And I kind of like took a second to kind of prep myself for looking down, and when I finally did, that's when I had realized that I had lost both my legs.
When I entered the Marine Corps, we were already at war in Afghanistan. So when I went in 2002 and walked into a recruiting office, I told the recruiter, I said, "You know what, I want to join the infantry. Can you guarantee me a 4-year contract in the infantry? And they just smiled and said, have a seat, young man. I was in Iraq from March of 2004 until August of 2004. On August 22nd of 2004, I was hit by a roadside bomb in a town called Mahmadiyah. I was in the machine gun turret of a Humvee. We got hit by 2 155 millimeter artillery shells. One of those can take out an Abrams tank, and we got hit by 2 of them in just a lightly skinned vehicle. I was thrown about 20 meters out of the vehicle from the turret. I had 45% of my cranium crushed in, so my forehead, where my hand is, this whole piece is an acrylic plate. I had shrapnel enter my right eye and actually exit through my left eye. I became the first U.S. Marine to lose both eyes in the global war on terror. I took shrapnel to my left knee. I fractured my patella. I cut my femoral artery. I actually did 30 major surgeries in the first 12 months, 3 of which I flatlined during. I spent 16 months in hospitals and rehab facilities before I actually got medically retired from the Marine Corps.
I was honored to be selected for the transition from the CH-46 Echo to the MV-22 Osprey. It was a tough go in the beginning, getting used to the controls and how the aircraft performed, but I love it. We had done some missions earlier in the day, and I was part of the cleanup on the back end of it. We were moving Marines to a different zone, and on the second go, we were departing from the zone and ended up impacting the ground at about 78 degrees nose down from an altitude of approximately 64, 65 feet. Because of the nature of the mission, we had some assets though that were quick to respond, and after we were stabilized, we were able to get on a C-130 and fly directly to Ramstein and get medical attention there.
February 27, 2007 came about. Started like any other day. We did our briefings. They knew exactly it was going to take us about 15-hour patrol that day to get through all the routes that we had planned. And then, we loaded up, and we had been on the road about 3 hours, and we came across one of the routes. I believe it was Route Primus. It was actually a dead-end road. And typically, when you plan your routes, you never cover the same spot more than once, because if you do, you get blown up because they can predict you. Unfortunately, with the dead-end road, there's one way down, one way back, and we had taken our time. And once we started coming back up, we picked up the pace a little bit. I want to say we were probably going about between 5 and 10 miles an hour, so it's not like we were speeding up the road, but we weren't creep crawling along either. And then I heard the blast. I can remember hearing the boom, and before I could even get like a choice 4-letter word out of my mouth, I was hitting the ground, and I can remember hitting my head and my shoulder on the ground when I got thrown from the vehicle. And as a leader, you always want to just pause for a second and just get a quick battle damage assessment so you can make a quick decision. It can't be long, it's just a quick pause. And as I did that, I looked at my vehicle, and I really at the time didn't see anything out of the unusual about it. What I didn't see was my guys. So I just immediately got up to run back for my vehicle. And as I got closer to the vehicle, that's when I could feel the flames hit me in the face. And I realized I was on fire. And because I felt like it was in the torso area, because it was just hitting me in the face so bad, I decided to drop my protective vest. And so I kind of just tossed it real quick, got down, and started to roll. And I only got about a roll and a half in. And the heat was so intense that it basically locked up my muscles. I couldn't move. So at that point, I can remember being face down in the dirt. And they always say your life flashes in front of you and stuff. I really didn't have that. But I definitely was like, okay, this is it for me. This is where my life ends. I'm going to die here, face down on the ground in Iraq. And, what am I going to do? I can't move, and I'm on fire. And about the time those emotions and those thoughts were coming over my body, I could hear my guys yelling for me. But I didn't know how far out they were. Didn't even know if there was anything they could do for me at the time. And before I knew it, they were hitting me with that fire extinguisher. And it went from that extreme heat to that extreme cooling. And it wasn't like I was freezing or anything, but it was just that cooling sensation, like immediately coming over my body. And I don't think I'll ever probably find the words to describe that feeling of that cooling sensation and the relief it provided me, like almost instantly. And before I knew it, I could start to hear the chopper coming in. The medevac was coming in. You know, all the guys would kind of lightly lay over me, not enough to irritate the burns or anything, but just protect me from the water rush and the bird landing.
We rolled out early morning, right after breakfast, for a mission, and our fourth vehicle just died. Like, the engine just died while we were out on mission. So we were going downhill and we stopped, pulled it over, hooked it up, ran back to the base, and then we were told that they wanted us to go ahead and go out again to finish our mission that we had set out that morning. And when we got to the same spot, we took a left, and when we went down that street is where our IED was. It detonated, sent shrapnel literally through our vehicle. Obviously there was a lot of dust, and as the dust settled and we were kind of able to start actually seeing around the vehicle cab, I remember just looking down and seeing blood all over the place. And the shrapnel had just ripped through my left leg from the knee to the ankle, along with some other pieces of the shrapnel that hit my right leg and right foot that broke 2 bones in there. On my left leg, a chunk of the tibia was blown out, and there was just shrapnel all over it. One of our team leaders who had taken control over the situation since our squad leader was down decided that they were just going to pack us up and take us back to the base. They patched us up, got us ready for transport, and then we flew to the hospital inside the green zone. It's where we started having our surgeries.
Definitely the most daunting task that I had was in the mortuary services. It left a scar on my brain that's still healing today. You know, when you're downrange, the mortuary business is a little easier. You know, there's an expectation of death in war. It's the stateside ones that really actually kind of affected me the most. You know, when I would deal with the families. I once had a little girl ask me after her father committed suicide why her daddy didn't love her. And, you know, that left a hole in my heart because I had no words for her. You know, I always try to be stoic. I'm a big guy in stature, and you know, my job is to make sure that this family, I can carry their grief for a little while. Making sure, you know, everything down to the processing of the remains, to the uniforming, to the movement, cremation, whatever the family wants, I would take care of through my team, you know, with my commander and my team. You know, the images are cold and real, and you know, we are intimate with death like no one other. We know how fragile the human body is and how quickly it can be over just like that. So eyes always got me, because after death there's no sheen in the eyes, there's no moisture. For a long time I couldn't look anyone in the eye, so I was perceived as weak. You know, especially in the military, you know, because when I would look someone in the eye, I could see them on the table. I would flash to them on the table right there, and there's nothing I could do about it. It's one of those things that plays over in your head over and over and over. Everything is a trigger, whether it be a car backfiring, you know, just that startle response, or you'll smell something that reminds you of, maybe you drive by a dumpster and there's, you know, a putrid smell that might remind you of the smell of bodies. You know, water deaths are the worst for that. And every time I would have my uniform on, I would smell bodies, and not just think I could smell bodies, but to the point of nauseum. I'd go to work, and it would be so bad that I'd have to go to the bathroom and vomit. So I just started wearing my physical training gear every day, my PT gear to work. But you know, working where I worked, a senior non-commissioned officer wearing PT gear all day, you know, a lot of questions are asked. Why? Why does he get to wear PT gear all day, and this, that, and the other? And so I felt like I was letting the team down a lot, but they wouldn't go away. So I had to do something, or I'd go to work at 7 and go home by 7:30. That's when my medical board started, and they decided that, you know, I was no longer fit to serve in the Air Force. And then, you know, I was almost at 20, so there was a process. And, you know, I knew if I fought, I could get to 20, and that was my goal. And for that last year of my military service, they asked me to work from home. And it, you know, it really affected me. I felt thrown away. You know, looking back in retrospect, it wasn't done maliciously to just get me out. It was done because they didn't know what to do with me. Here's a guy that is top notch too. Now he can't even show up to work and be there more than 30 minutes. I mean, it's not, it doesn't help good order and discipline, you know, especially when you're a senior non-commissioned officer. So I did that. And I sat at home every day, and you know, I might get one email a week. When I'd show back up to work to do my weekly mandatory meetings, people would ask me if I was new. The water cooler conversations that would happen between me and my colleagues about the Sunday night football games on Monday morning didn't happen anymore. When I'd walk up, everyone just kind of stopped their conversation and walked away. So it's definitely that broken egg. And it killed me inside.
In 10 days will be 10 years since our whole life was turned upside down. We were stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas, so I was at my home with my then, I had a 6-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 1-year-old son, our boys, and I got a phone call that changed my whole world. I had, they call it the rear detachment, there's soldiers that will always stay back from the unit in case anything happens. They call the spouse. And so I got the phone call. They said, this is so-and-so from the rear detachment. Sergeant First Class Matthew Miles was involved in a serious accident, is what they call it, and he's in critical condition and he's lost his leg. And my thought is, oh my gosh, is he gonna be okay? Is he alive? He's alive, okay. And that's what I held on to. And I had these tiny little boys that were wondering, you know, what's going on. So every day the Department of the Army, I would call and harass them, when is he leaving Germany? When is he leaving Germany? So as soon as they told me he left Germany, then the Army paid for my plane ticket to go be with him at Walter Reed. What I had been told was my husband had minor facial injuries, and when I finally saw him, his face was hanging off basically. The engine had gone into his chin, had part of the transmission, and he had, they had put the tracheostomy, the breathing, so he had that. And a few minutes after I saw him, I passed out, and then he was in the ICU and he couldn't speak because he had the trach and he had the collapsed vocal cords, and both his hyoid bone had broken on both sides, which normally would kill someone. So he's very fortunate that that didn't kill him. And he had shrapnel to his whole face, he had shrapnel in his eyes, his left hand was shattered, and his right leg had been, they call it a pylon fracture, where it's like an internal explosion. So his right leg was just destroyed. He had in his inner thigh a huge chunk gone, and he was missing his leg from below the knee. It was just blown off. And he had a lot of injuries to his shoulders from just the blast. So when I saw him in the hospital, that was the first step of his then recovery.
I was in the hospital in Japan for a couple weeks, Vietnam for about a week, till I got to Japan, a couple weeks in Japan, then the flight home, Scott Air Force Base, then Fort Knox, Kentucky, 700 miles away from home. I end up in this hospital. I'm 19 years old. I don't know anybody there. I'm in a ward with a bunch of combat wounded guys, and I'm really struggling because I think I may lose my leg. What are people going to think? I always wanted to be a pilot. I was engaged. I didn't know what she would think about me having losing a leg. My life has changed. So in that period of time, I think I lost about 30 or 35 pounds out of anxiety, unable to eat. And so I was having a fair amount of anxiety, probably PTSD from winding down from combat, going full fight or flight every day for 8 months, to I'm laying in a hospital. And it took my folks and my fiance, now my wife of 49 years, about 6 weeks before they could gather the resources to come see me, maybe 6 weeks from the time I got hurt. And when they finally managed to come and see me, and they looked me in the eyes and knew this is the same guy, they knew I was the same guy, I started to heal. So it was almost almost like a switch was thrown.
I was out for a few days until I came to, I think it was in Kandahar during the Purple Heart ceremony. That's where, you know, some of the officers, they came through and they did a Purple Heart ceremony in the hospital. When our company commander came in, they announced that he was in the room, and I was partially conscious, still had a breathing tube in, had restraints on me, and I remember vaguely trying to pull my arm up out of the restraints, and I rendered a salute. A lot of people have seen that. It's a pretty cool picture. It really is. In the state of mind that I was in, hearing that an officer was present, that was just a quick reaction that I had.
My name is Taylor Hargis, wife of Joshua Hargis. My first night of all 4 of his deployments that he didn't call me, and I knew something was horribly wrong. That was the most difficult night of my life. The following morning, I got my phone call that Josh was severely wounded. They told me his initial injuries and that they would be flying him to Germany once he was stable enough to make that flight. My whole concern the entire time was, is he gonna make it back here to me? Those 10 days where we were separated, where he wasn't quite ready to come back from Germany, were the toughest days.
I'm not sure if it was in Bagram, Kandahar, or Germany. You know, I came to, and there was a nurse standing there, and I could look down and see that, you know, the blankets were flat where, you know, the rest of my legs, where my feet should have been. And, you know, as nice as she could, she asked if I wanted to see it.
So I remember all of the ambulances were transporting the guys from the plane who were coming back from being injured and unloading them at the hospital. I could see Josh through the window of the ambulance, and he smiled when he saw me, and I just had the biggest smile, and I jumped on the back of the ambulance, and he grabbed me and gave me a big kiss. And it felt incredible just to touch him, because I was so worried that I wouldn't be able to.
Okay, continue. Okay.
When a combat wounded vet with prosthetics goes to fly commercial and he goes through the TSA line, more than likely he does not have a pre-check card. And if he does, because I wear a prosthetic, my ticket always prints out pre-check. When I get there, they wind me down completely, and I'm used to it now. A lot of vets will never get used to it. I fly a lot, so I can handle it. Guys that fly once a year aren't going to handle it well. When the TSA pulls them aside and says, "I'm sorry, you're going to have to pull off your prosthetics so we can swab it down," they're not going to do that. Some of them turn right around and leave the airport because they gave their legs in an explosion to protect our freedom to fly, and now they're being denied that very freedom.
I travel quite a bit, unfortunately. TSA, I understand that there's a need for security in our airports, but when you're standing there in front of everybody and their mother in your dress blues with your ribbons and your medals that you got for not only fighting terrorism but being wounded because of terrorists, and you're being patted down and searched like a common criminal, and your Fourth Amendment rights are being violated, it's extremely stressful, especially for somebody with post-traumatic stress and a traumatic brain injury. Having to go through that every time I fly, and there's sometimes I'll do 15, 16 round-trip flights a year. It makes you dread going somewhere. It makes you dread traveling because of what you have to experience to get on that airplane, what they put you through to get on that airplane. I never got hassled that hard in the Marine Corps, and we're the freaking Marine Corps. To get on an airplane these days is degrading, demeaning, and I got to be honest with you, I don't feel any safer because of it. I just feel violated.
Post 9/11, there's such a need for security at an airport, and I understand that, just as Michael does and anybody else. But to the extremes that they take, you know, and it's sad that it's gotten to the point where you can no longer travel via a commercial flight and have fun and enjoy the flight like you used to be able to. Now it's just stressful.
When I have to travel, I typically fly commercial, and if we're going on a long trip, I want to bring my wheelchair because I can't always wear my prosthetics. And I've done it one time where I didn't take my chair, I needed it, and it sucked. I had to go get crutches and hop around on one prosthetic. So with all of that, all of the responsibility falls on my wife's shoulders most of the time, because going through security, I can't just go through and help my wife out. You know, she has to go through and wrangle the 2 kids, the diaper bag, the dog, and meanwhile, you know, I'm getting patted down by TSA and getting checked, getting swabbed for explosive odor, and it's a hassle. And then getting on the plane, it's, you know, the same thing. It's pretty difficult sometimes.
Going into a commercial flight, I actually have to bring my wheelchair with me, and then actually getting onto the plane, they take my chair and put it under, check it in, and then sometimes, depending on where I sit on the plane, the leg room can be difficult. So I either have to take my legs off and put them in the checked luggage above, or just kind of hang out with it. But it's commercial flight can be difficult sometimes.
Not only that, but you know, you have a layover and you only have 30 minutes to get from one flight to the other. I can't run there, and I'm not going to be able to run there. And my luck, it always seems like the 2 planes are on the opposite sides of the terminal. And so if I don't bring a wheelchair or get somebody to help out with, you know, transporting me, it can be really frustrating.
Traveling is by far the biggest anxiety-driven aspect of, you know, any trip that I go on. You know, when I think of going somewhere that I can't go into with a vehicle, I get irritable, start getting cranky. You know, I'm not very pleasant to be around, and it's all anxiety-driven about flying. You know, I'll get there, and then it's like, you know, is the TSA support going to be there? You know, is there going to be a hassle with my bags? And then at the checkpoint, you know, I can't stand up and go through the regular scanner, so they always got to pat me down, and then, you know, by the time it's done, you know, there's a big mess, and you know, sometimes it seems like I know more about the TSA laws than the guys that are going, you know, that are doing the procedures, you know, telling me I can't have this or can't have that, and it's like, well, actually, sir, if you check with the supervisor, you'll find that I can have it. But anyway, it's just a hassle, and then pushing through the airport and getting to the gate, and it really, there's no enjoyable aspect of flying commercially. Usually by the time I get off the plane and I get to baggage, and hopefully make it to the car, I'm usually mentally spent. I'm exhausted, physically and emotionally exhausted.
I've dealt with airports, and sometimes they're difficult just because of the crowds. Crowds still trigger me at times, and I flew home with 11 pounds of metal on my leg and a wheelchair, and just the whole ordeal of having to get on an airplane, like a standard airplane, with several hundred people walking by you staring at you because you look weird, you look different, you have this metal contraption on your leg wrapped in bandages. You already feel down as it is for being down like that and being away from your guys, and then to have like people look at you, it makes you feel worse.
When I retired, I had an airplane, and I thought, well, I'll start this transportation service for combat wounded with my airplane. And a friend of mine challenged me and said, you can't keep this idea to yourself. It's, you know, you need to create a national network and do this, and with your connections and that sort of thing, you could probably succeed. So I funded this thing, stood it up, created a national organization and network. So instead of the time going to the VA and flying missions, I spent the time developing a platform, technology platform, so I could make this scalable and nationwide. And I called it the Veterans Airlift Command for a reason. I didn't want it to be the Veterans Charity Network, because veterans don't take charity well. Veterans are proud people. And so Veterans Airlift Command had a bit of a military sound to it, and it might even sound like a wing of the Air Force or a wing of the Army, so guys wouldn't feel embarrassed to call and say, I'd like to schedule a flight with the Veterans Airlift Command. That was the purpose, the reason for the name. So a few people knew what I was doing because I'd had connections with the Department of Defense through my previous role at General Motors, and they sort of put the word out. And one day, before we had recruited one pilot, I got a call. A young Marine had been wounded in Iraq. He was home on convalescent leave and was seriously hurt. His legs were in a mess. He couldn't walk. You know, I was on crutches and casts and that sort of thing. And his unit was coming back to Camp Lejeune in Carolina from Iraq. He was in Melbourne, Florida. Someone had bought him an airline ticket, frequent flyer tickets. So he went from Melbourne, Florida to Atlanta to Birmingham to Charlotte to Jackson, Carolina. 5 stops, 13 hours, he was exhausted. His dad called the DOD and said, you guys, there's got to be a better way to do this. He didn't even want to go to the reunion. He was so exhausted to get his combat badge, his Purple Heart from his unit. He was exhausted. He went, but it wiped him out. So now he needed to go home. The DOD friend called and said, are you ready to help? And I said, this will be the test of the Veterans Airlift Command, because we had no pilots. Now I'm in Minnesota. I'm not going to help. I'm too far away. Emailed 6 friends in Florida and Georgia. 6 friends that I knew that had airplanes, and just emailed them the story. 4 of them responded within hours and said, I'll do it. I had 4 people in line to do that trip. And I remember that day I just swelled up with, this is going to work because people want to do this.
I was a corporal in the United States Marine Corps, mostly reserve time, some intermixed active duty time. Now I'm the chief pilot for the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, and take care of the pilot side of the operation. Anybody that signs a blank check with their life to protect my family could always be handled better, in my opinion. That's one of the greatest parts about working for the Choctaw Nation, is that they would allow us to give back like that, to be able to help folks that have done so much to help us, and I feel guilty sometimes sitting at home in my recliner. When you fly these guys and gals and you see what they go through on a daily basis, your problems disappear. My employer, their heart is for our veterans. You know, when we started this, it was as long as you can meet our obligations, go do one a month, just anywhere in the country. And with these aircraft, we have the ability to do that. So when we first started, we would get word of a trip and run it up the chain of command. And by the time it got to the top, it was always approved. But the process took a few days, and somebody else had picked up the trip. And that happened to us 3 or 4 times. And we finally went and talked to the chief and the assistant chief, and they said, if you can meet our obligations, don't even ask, just go. If it comes up and we can do it, get after it. That's pretty amazing.
My name is Judy Allen. I'm the Historic Projects Officer for the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. Well, we are very thankful to all of those that serve in our military and very thankful to all of our Choctaw people who serve. We honor them all. And so when we were given the opportunity to become part of the Veterans Airlift Command, there was no hesitation on our part. We found out what a wonderful organization they are to give days and moments of relief to veterans who had served and help them in medical appointments and other appointments where they were having difficulty in traveling. And we heard their stories, and our pilots of our airplane were so willing to serve. And when we are able to do something like this for our military heroes, it gives you a warmth inside that just can't be matched by anything else. The Choctaw Nation each year has a veterans ceremony that pays homage to our military men and women, not only those that have been lost, but those that are still living.
Gary Batten, Chief of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. Our vision is to live out the Choctaw spirit of faith, family, and culture. And so that's the reason why I think people need to understand that we need to balance the historical side and cultural side as well as the revenue side of the Choctaw Nation. But we're all about our faith, of making sure that we give to our fellow people, that we respect, that we help our families to grow and to prosper, while making sure that we don't ever forget where we came from, who we are as people. I think that's probably the most important role as the Chief of the Choctaw Nation that I need to fulfill. Well, I mean, for me, what better way to show our love, our grace for our fellow human being than through the Veterans Airlift Command, those who've died for the same values, for the same reasons that we exist today, that we have the freedoms that we have the right to today. I mean, and I'm so appreciative of our pilots. They're the ones that really, that started this, that brought this to the nation. And I'm so proud of Chief Powell that he wanted to make sure that that dedication was there and commitment to our military men and women. I've just been fortunate to continue that legacy that we've started, but I truly believe, as I said before, that goes back to 1830, to when we believe in protecting our fellow human beings, our land, our country, our way of life. We're continuing that same spirit today. It's just through the Veterans Airlift Command.
In July of 1969, my rifle company, Kilo Company 33, was hit by a very large enemy force, and one of my machine gunners, Randy Herod from Oklahoma, saved my life when I was blown off the back of a tank. Randy Herod passed last year, but we got to see a good bit of each other after the war. He wrote a book called Blues Bastards, which was the nickname of our rifle platoon, and he saved my life. I see what the Choctaw Nation is doing for the Veterans Airlift Command, and it's like Randy Herod was still alive with us.
The way we're organized is we don't put pressure on anyone, so there's no cost to sign up. If you're instrument rated and you're willing to file and fly an instrument flight plan and you're proficient current and you have a high performance airplane, you can register your airplane in less time than it takes to hit direct to or enter a small flight plan in your Garmin. You can sign up in just a few minutes. You'll get an email from us telling you about the story, about the mission. If you can't help, you delete the email. You don't have to say, I'm sorry, I can't help. There's no pressure at all to respond even, because someone's going to pick it up. I figured if 4 out of 6 pick up the first mission, if I send it out to 100, I'm going to have guys fighting each other to fly these if we get enough guys around the country. When we couldn't get a mission covered by the volunteers that we had, we would send the mission to 100, a blind email to 100 people that own private jets because we had the database. And this is junk email. You'd send 100 and we get 10 responses. And of the 10 responses, not one of them was take me off your list. How can we help? I would love to do this, I can't do this, but sign me up, I want to do the next one. And that's how we recruited the volunteers that we have today.
Well, my name's Phil Tholen. I'm a pilot and plane owner. I haven't always been interested in planes. And I've worked a number of years at a place and made some money, and I kind of semi-retired in like 2004. But about that time, a bunch of lawyer friends of mine were wanting to learn to fly so they could fly little planes out to western Oklahoma to do cases. And so I went out for the first time, did that, and I kind of liked it. And so I just kept going at it, and then sometime during that era, I decided that I would have a goal, and the goal would be for me to fly a jet airplane by myself. And by 2006, I had gone through all the ratings, and I was able to buy a jet, and I went to school and took the ratings and basically accomplished what I wanted. But the problem with that is if you fly a jet, you need to fly the jet often, or you'll kill yourself. So I didn't have that many reasons to fly. And so about that time, I read an article about Veterans Airlift Command just starting in a flying magazine. So I called them up, talked to Walt, got on it, and we started doing it.
My name's Mark Holt, and I'm from Mason City, Iowa. And about a year ago, I met a gentleman. His name was Walt Fricke at the NBAA in Las Vegas. And they had a program called Veteran Airlift Command. I really like the organization. I like what it's all about, helping vets. The aircraft behind me is called the Millennium Phenom. I was given a gentleman's name by the name of John Starr. And when I told him I was looking to paint my jet, he said, "Mark, the seriousness of these veterans' lives has already been played out on the battlefield. Wouldn't it be nice if they had something fun? Keep the pseudo camel paint job, but have something fun and unique." And he created that. I don't know if you noticed the battle damage down here. We thought it was a meteor at first, but I think a meteor would have gone straight through. So pretty sure it was a phaser strike that just glanced off the outer skin. My favorite story of transporting a vet, I reached into the baggage compartment and I grabbed his backpack when we got him back home, and his Purple Heart was attached to it, and it was the first time I'd seen it during the whole trip. And I handed it to him, almost with tears in my eyes, and the young man set the backpack down and gave me a hug and said, "Mr. Holt, I never in a million years would have believed I would have flown in a private jet, much less be able to sit in the front right seat on both legs." And he was so appreciative. It humbled me because he's thanking me for thanking him. And so it was a very humbling moment, and a delightful young man. And we took him to California so he could learn how to surf.
I didn't know he had seen the Purple Heart. For me, it's just, it's there and it's part of my everyday life. But for him, I just wanted to thank him and give him a hug and for everything that he had done for me, because that weekend was memorable, and him being a part of it, and with the jet, with the Millennium Phenom, it just took it to another level, and I couldn't thank him enough for it.
I've never met a finer group of people. There's not a one of them that has this feeling sorry for themselves, or they don't have a chip on their shoulder about their condition in life. And everyone we've flown has just been exemplary, nice young men. And I look at it this way: the jet helped my company become successful. So I thought it was fitting, since the jet gave so much to me, it would be nice to let the jet give back. And so our slogan is the Millennium Phenom, serving those that served us, with capital US.
Sean McDermott, and I'm a retired Navy captain. It was 2010, and I was in an FBO like this, and I saw a magazine and I saw Veterans Airlift for the first time, and I had never heard of it before. At that time, we were getting a new upgrade to our aircraft, the C2 glass cockpit, and so we had a requirement to have 10 hours of flying time before we took passengers out to the aircraft carrier. It was a reasonable risk reduction to have flown the glass cockpit at least once or twice prior to going out to the ship with passengers. So as a result, our pilots were flying various places around the states getting that training requirement done. So at the time I said, why can't we help some people while we're doing it? We're a passenger carrying aircraft. The people that we were flying were active duty military, and so they met the criteria to do it. So I contacted Walt Fricke. Within a couple of days, we had the logistics sorted out, and I was made aware of a mission down to Georgia to pick up an Army soldier that needed to get up to Bethesda. So I flew that first mission, and with another co-pilot and an air crewman, and we flew down to Georgia, picked this gentleman up, and flew him to Andrews Air Force Base. Maybe a week or so later, Walt called me personally and said, "I have a problem. I'm not sure how to solve it." And so what it was, there was a Navy SEAL that had been injured down in Florida. They're trying to get him back to his unit in Little Creek, Norfolk area. The issue was he couldn't sit in a chair. He needed to be laying flat. So Walt had tried a couple of different avenues, and one I believe was an air ambulance. It was going to be $80,000, and that at the time that would have put a big hurt on him and VAC. By the time he's done talking, I've already arranged for the flight. So I said, "Can he be at the airport at 3 o'clock?" And he's like, 3 o'clock tomorrow? I'm like, 3 o'clock today. The C2 is capable of having a Stokes litter. So basically, there's racks that we can put in the side of the aircraft and have stretchers. And so we made that arrangement for this individual and got him back up to Norfolk, Portsmouth area. So Walt was happy. That's good. In particular, the SEAL team commander was happy. He was thrilled that I was able to help where nobody else was able to help, and he basically offered if I ever needed any situations taken care of, that he would do that for me. So that's a good thing to keep in your back pocket.
My husband, he was injured October 13th, and then it was March by the time he could go home for the first time. And we had someone tell us about this organization called Veterans Airlift Command, and so we called them, and Jen Silvati, who is our executive director and now my great friend, she called me and she said, "You know, we have a pilot that we're willing to take you guys home." We just couldn't believe that someone's really gonna just take us in a private airplane. So that was our experience. I was a passenger first, and then I've been working for VAC for 6 years now. I was looking for a job, and Jen Silvati knew I was looking for a job, and she said, "Would you like to come work for me?" She told me you can work from home, which for me, having 3 sons was a bonus because I could still be a stay-at-home mom, but work and contribute, and now I get to help other people that are in the position I was once in. And for me, it's very meaningful to know that there's pilots out there willing to help someone like me, and it's just great. I couldn't ask for a better job.
I had a 10-year Army reunion coming up that was going to be in Iowa, and I had no idea. I really wanted to go. Lots of people were going. I started talking to a friend of mine who has used the Veterans Airlift Command before, and he told me about it, and I said, "There's no way that this is legit." I thought he was pranking me, and he sent me the info, and I called them up, and they're like, "Yeah, this is something we can definitely do. We would love to get you to your Army reunion." And I said, "Listen, I don't have a lot of money. This is no charge for you. If it wasn't for the Veterans Airlift Command, there would have been no way I could have gotten to my Army reunion, seen my friends that I hadn't seen some of them I hadn't seen in 10 years. And they didn't make me feel like I was asking for a handout." And the pilots made me, I gotta say, made me feel especially special. I was afraid of flying, and Mark pretty much made me realize that because in 747s, when you go flying, that you're just cargo. And he said, he sat me right up front, and he says, "Here's what all these noises are you're hearing when you're in the back." He says, "Here's what, why these noises are happening, and you don't have to worry about anything." And I became extremely relaxed, and everything was okay. And then Mark said to me something I'll never forget. "If I die, this is what you need to do." And then he hit the wheel, and the plane started doing like this. Now I felt like the plane was going like this, and I felt, well, I'm gonna die in 3 seconds. And then he just told me how to correct the plane, and then I flew the Millennium Phenom. And then so I went from very, very chilled and relaxed to thinking we were gonna die, and then I flew it and we corrected, and then everything. So I'm not afraid of flying anymore.
My feelings are just simply, here's a young man who served our country, went over to a place that, quite honestly, is a scary place to go, I can't imagine. And I have so much admiration for the people that serve. But I think the thing that has impressed me the most with young men like Adam is they don't expect it. Their gratitude is off the scale. They're thankful, they're humbled, and here we are thanking them, and I get more thank yous back from them than I give out, it seems like. But I just got to know him, and he's a quality young man, and we've had a lot of a decent amount of interaction back and forth, and quite honestly, I would say that almost every vet that I've flown has become a friend. And
well, you should. This is an amazing thing that you do.
Yeah, well, so was what you did.
Nah.
10 years in the military, getting paid nothing, to retire on a medical pension that pays you nothing. Yeah, it's an amazing thing what you did too. I'm glad you're back in school though.
All right, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you. Thank you so much. I'm proud to know you.
So, anyway.
Veteran Airlift Command is the solution that we have found. My wife came to me last year, and she had heard about this nonprofit, Veteran Airlift Command. And she said, "What do you know about them?" And I said, I don't know much about them. I know the guy down the street actually made a big donation to help start it. She said, "Do you think we would qualify?" And I said, I don't think so, honey. I honestly don't. I don't think so. I think those are for guys that are like severely wounded. And she called. And it turns out we do qualify. And we've done a few trips with Veteran Airlift Command. And the difference in travel is night and day. Being able to climb on a plane, not have to deal with security, just have a nice quiet flight to wherever you're going, to get off a plane, to just go to the hotel, not have to worry about a baggage claim system, not have to worry about a security checkpoint to get to it, not having to be searched, just makes the whole traveling experience much easier, much less stressful for not only myself but my wife. And to be honest with you, flying around in a private plane is kind of nice. It's a great way to get around. We feel like we're getting on this airplane. This is a great honor for us, that somebody is willing to donate their time, donate their plane, and take us somewhere. But what we find normally is these pilots are honored to have us on the plane. And it makes this interesting dynamic, because you're trying to say thank you and they're trying to say thank you. And what we've noticed is we've had some that just are pilots, and then some that are owner-operators of their own planes. And I mean, they're just good people. And you can tell that these are Americans that care about their country and care about the people that serve them in their country, that protect them. It just makes you realize that there's still a lot of good in America. There's still a lot of good people in this country, and it helps kind of turn down a lot of that negative background noise that is constantly going on.
You know, when we first came across Veteran Airlift Command, it was like, well, maybe, you know, because we don't get any help from a lot of organizations. It was a shot in the dark, and it paid off though, because I remember the first flight with them, you just pull up. There's no hustle bustle. It's not me trying to carry on the carry-on, pull a carry-on, guide him. We're trying to maneuver through an airport, which is not easy if you are blind. We just got there to the airport and we got on the plane. My husband has dignity and respect again.
They told me that I was needed down here and that they were going to pick me up. So Thursday morning, I got up, normal morning routine, got in the car with the kids, went up the road about 10 minutes to the airfield. This plane behind me came in a few minutes later. Pilots jumped out, greeted me with a smile, you know, let the kids check out the plane, got my stuff in there, helped me get inside, get situated, took off, came down, and then helped me get off, and you know, just so much easier, so much less hassle. I didn't have to drive anywhere to get to the airport just to get messed with. Veterans Airlift Command, and then just constantly helping guys get to the hospital or help their families get to their loved ones. And these awesome pilots with their beautiful birds come to you, pick you up, take you to where you need to be, and take that stress, you know, out of usually an already very stressful situation away and make life better.
Veterans Airlift Command completely changes it. Instead of having to go through security and actually going through airports like that, can walk right up to the plane, get on the plane in a couple minutes and be on the way. And then getting to the next airport, it's the same thing. It's completely made it like a world of difference to do so.
So our first Veterans Airlift Command was awesome. You know, it's the first time we had ever been on a private plane. I mean, it was night and day difference compared to flying commercial. And not only is it good for us, but it's good for Harley too, because, you know, she's my service dog, so I could take her onto a commercial plane, but I don't want to throw her up against, you know, the bulkhead or try to get her underneath the seat. Just because she's a dog doesn't mean she should be any less comfortable. And so with these, not only can I kind of stretch out, you know, take my legs off and relax, but so can Harley.
I had a organization reach out to me that they wanted to have they had a surfing trip, a beach trip coming up where they were going to fly us out to San Diego, put us in a hotel on the beach, and then we were going to have different activities we were going to do throughout the weekend. And that organization reached out to Veteran Airlift Command to fly me out there to the event itself at no cost to me and no cost to the organization that they were working with. So that's when I met Mark, where I literally showed up not knowing what to expect. All they said was, we're going to have this, he's going to pick you up at the airport. And then he contacted me and he was like, can you meet me in Chandler? And I was like, the Glendale airport's right around the corner from me. So he was like, that works for me. He flew out here, and this is literally like a 5-minute drive from my house. It still blows my mind, like, to be here in this amazing jet that he has, and just the willingness to lend his services, lend his jet to us to take care of veterans and get us out to stuff like retreats and medical appointments and the such. We're average blue-collar guys that just wanted to do stuff for our country, and it's like, most of us weren't educated beforehand. Like, there wasn't a lot of college unless you were an officer. So it's just like, we're just normal people, and to have someone that's willing to do stuff like this for us, it's mind-boggling.
You know, went online and looked up Veterans Airlift, and I said, well, maybe they can help me get over this stuff with the airports. So I called the number, and Jen answered the phone, and we had a long conversation, just kind of like me and you were having now. And I told her what I went through, and you know, I said I didn't think, you know, I know it's for guys that got injured in combat, and I'm not that guy. And you know, I think a lot of us, you know, downplay what we have, and they're like, you know, it's like, I'm just PTSD. We always say that. We always had that I'm just this, and you know, I think we do ourselves a disservice. But after hearing my story, and you know, I think I got a call in like 30 minutes. She said, we have you a flight. And that was my first trip on Veterans Airlift, one of many. They were very accommodating. It was pretty neat, because you know, they let me sit up front on one of them. You know, brought my daughter on one trip. It became part of my family. I still talk to Jen this day. I now work at a drug and alcohol treatment center. We work very closely to get warriors flights sometimes.
The first flight we ever took with Veterans Airlift Command, one of our liaisons had booked it, so Veterans Airlift Command had reached out to them. I didn't know that it was a private flight, so I had gotten an email from a liaison, and they said, the pilot will be contacting you 48 hours before the flight. And I was like, oh man, that's weird. Is it because he's injured, or because we had a problem on the last flight? Like, what's this about? So I really didn't know what it was, and then we showed up, and it was a private flight, and I was floored. There was no, you know, check lines and security and all this stuff, and they weren't going through all of our bags, and it was such a relief. And then they said, you know, if you need any other flights further on down the road, we're here to help you for as long as you need our help. And I was ecstatic. I was like, well, I don't want to take advantage of such an amazing, you know, thing to do for somebody else, but In the years since Josh's initial injury and since our first contact with Veterans Airlift Command, they have been there as often as they possibly could for us, and it is such a relief. The mental stress and anxiety that you go through prior to getting on a commercial flight is gone, because you don't have to deal with any of that.
I thought it was absolutely amazing that they did this for people. I didn't really want to do it because I felt like I wasn't deserving. But after our first flight, meeting the pilots, and it was absolutely amazing. The people that we've met, they make it so easy. They make you feel so welcome and so appreciated. You know, they want to help you out through your time of need. And being able to drive right up to the airplane, take the stuff from the car, throw it in the airplane, get right on, not have to go through security, and being able to just sit down and talk with the pilots, these just amazing people. You know, a lot of them, they've served in the military, they have family members in the military, and if they're not one of those, then they're just incredible Americans who are so appreciative. They want to help out, they want to give back. And a lot of times I walk away from that experience thinking or wishing that I could do something else for them.
Walt and his organization, his pilots and the owners have done so much for so many of the guys. You don't have the hassle of getting dropped off at the airport and making your way through, a cluster gaggle at the airport. It's not because of hostility. It's hard on them. I mean, these guys who've been in the hospital for months and sometimes years at a time are physically debilitated by the experience, and so it's a challenge. Walt will pick them up at the nearest airport. One of his pilots pick them up at the nearest airport, drop them off where they need to be, bring the families to them if they're in extremis, get them around, and just the convenience of doing that is extraordinarily helpful to them. If you can reduce that travel time for that family trying to get to a loved one, or for that wounded soldier, sailor, airman, guardsman, or Marine to get back home, it means a lot to them.
Early November of 2007, we got a call from them wanting us to take a veteran named Michael Schlitz. I think Michael Schlitz's name is all over the internet right now because he's done so well. He had been injured severely, 90% burns, 90% of his body, burned his arms off, burned his nose off. It was a horrible accident. They wanted him flown from San Antonio to Fort Drum, New York, which is on the Canadian border, to meet his unit, the 10th Mountain Division, as they came back from deployment in Iraq. It was very important to both the general in charge of the division and to Michael, and it was important to the people in San Antonio. So important that they assigned an RA nurse and doctor to fly with him. He was not in good shape. He was in a wheelchair, couldn't get out. And we flew him up there in the middle of a huge rainstorm. So we landed there in the middle of the night, pouring down rain, and they got him out, and the guys in his unit were out there and formed a human tunnel for him to go in his wheelchair through this tunnel into the dryness without him getting wet. And they had been standing out there a long time. The stories I've heard are unbelievable. It just makes me think of anything that's ever happened to me pales by comparison. Every time I start feeling sorry for myself for some reason, I think of that, and about that time I fly somebody, and I say, boy, are you full of crap. You haven't done anything compared to them.
Well, this is something that I would like to see transcend the generations, because support for veterans ebbs and flows in this country. Historically, we've seen that we tend to forget our vets over time. This is a service that I believe is going to be needed lifelong for the guys who are currently wounded, and who in the future will be willing to serve if we're not taking care of our veterans today. I'd like to actually create an endowment fund to have this continue in perpetuity, because we've figured out how to do this. We have a business model that is very low overhead. It's scalable in terms of what we can handle without adding overhead. So we kind of know what our nut is going to be for the long term. I'm looking for some other guys to come alongside me to help fund this, that will fund the operations of this in perpetuity. We also would like to double the size of our fleet. We need more high-performance aircraft, turboprops and jets. We need more volunteers. I don't want a veteran to call us and feel like he has to wait 2 weeks to find out whether or not we're going to get him a ride. I'd like to say, and we right now execute on over 90%. When we get the request for the flight, 90% of them are filled by volunteers. It doesn't happen the day that we get the request, but if I had double the number of volunteers, very likely that would be the case. If you fly your own airplane, a single pilot, jets, high-performance aircraft, turboprop, you need to remain proficient. You need to fly. And so if you need to fly, there is no better excuse than to fly a deserving combat wounded warrior to his home or to what destination he requires. You maintain proficiency, but you get so much more out of it, probably more than the vet. So you're signing a thank you note with your airplane. You're personally involved. You're making eye contact and shaking hands with the guy who provided you with the freedom to fly your airplane in the first place. That's tremendously rewarding. They would prefer not to have to ask. They would prefer to be able to travel like all of us do on the commercial airlines and get up and go whenever they wanted to go. They can't do that. They've sacrificed for the rest of their lives their ability to exercise the very freedoms that they procured for us. So why wouldn't we use our resources to make their life easier for the rest of their lives? They've earned it.
I mean, there was a time when it was short swords and legionnaires, clashing one another at arm's length, and now you can, from half a world away, kill people. And I hope it's not becoming so easy that we succumb to it too easily. Will we ever see peace? I doubt it in my lifetime. I would like to hope for it. I pray for it, but I rather think that it is a condition of humankind and not a good one. But it gives opportunities for good humans to do kind things for others. Veterans Airlift Command has done things for thousands and thousands of young wounded Americans and their families that others didn't or couldn't do. And it's an extraordinary tribute to the extraordinary resources that these guys have brought to this, the aircraft, the pilots, the fuel, the cost of maintenance, all of which is absorbed, not one penny of which is passed on to the wounded veteran or the family. That to me says a lot about the kinds of people that Walt has put together with Veterans Airlift Command.
Well, I think my dreams of being a fighter pilot are shattered. My dreams of being a concert pianist are shattered because of my hand. But luckily, I have other dreams. I'm a dreamer myself, I got involved with Southeastern Guide Dogs and co-founded their Veteran Services program. I got into motivational speaking.
One of the things I battled with is sense of purpose. My entire adult life I was a soldier. And I had the opportunity to go back to Iraq. I got a chance to do some more public speaking over there. And so when I came back, I just kind of went full in and did motivational speaking and leadership speaking. And so that's what I do now. It's my purpose. It's what I like to do. Anything I can do for this community, I'm going to do.
Transition has been very tough for me, as a lot of military people would say. So now I have found my home at Warrior's Heart, which is right down the road here in Bandera, Texas. It's a drug and alcohol treatment facility for specifically first responders, military, law enforcement, and every day I get to impact lives. Every day I'm the first one, I'm the one that, when they call for help, that picks the phone up. And when you bring a warrior home and you finally get to meet them and you say, welcome home, and they hug you and they whisper in your ear, you saved my life. Well, that's enough fuel to go for the next day.
They're not just our source of transportation, they become our friends. Yeah, well, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. And so when I first saw the plane, I knew we were gonna get along. And then we actually got to ride together on the way back too, which was really cool.
Despite all the tragedy, despite all the craziness, I lead a blessed life. I've got an incredible family. It starts with my wife, who is just my best friend and everything. I've got 6 wonderful kids. Yes, so it fills my life up. Sorry, I'm getting emotional.
Now I like to say I have my life back. I'm not in a prison of my own mind from my PTSD. I have a life again where I am able to go out and do stuff.
Life is pretty incredible. We're one of the lucky ones. Josh came home and he overcome his injuries and has adapted to his new normal, and we're now parents of 2 children and we own a home and we're very happy together, and we're so happy to live the life that we live now.
The Sax Raptors on Facebook. We just hard rock, heavy metal cover band. We just love to rock it out on the weekends, and it's very cathartic for me. Because 2 years ago, I would not have been able to be playing in crowded bars with this many people. So to be able to do this and be able to be up on stage and play music for people that actually enjoy the same kind of music is just phenomenal for me. I love it. It's terrific.
Hey Maria, how are you? Good to see you again. So strangely approaching. Yeah, I've heard a lot about you, seen a lot about you. Yeah, you're looking better than in some of the photos that we've seen.
Well, thank you.
It's a good
I am kind of a
improvement,
handsome
yeah.
individual, so I appreciate that.
Excellent.
Al, what's my title?
Al, what's John's title?
Am I just?
Down in the background?
What?
Well,
Hey.
hold on. What's his title? John doesn't know what his title is. He doesn't know what he does.
Am I co-pilot or?
Senior captain.
Senior captain. Okay, there we go. Had to make sure. Thank you very much.
Lift him up on your lap.
Come here, buddy.
Let's chat.
Come here.
You have to be very quiet while Mummy's talking. No, it'd be neat if you don't mind. I think.